How do you deal with your faith in the face of a tragedy? What does that mean? How do we go about processing those two things? Today, we're actually going to look at a story and deal with a real-life example of someone who was faced with just that kind of situation, and we're going to see what they did. Hi, everybody. This is Dan Stribling, and today we're going to be looking at that on Truth Tuesday. So today I'd like to tell you a story. It might be a story that you've heard before, but if not, I hope you find it inspiring. I would like to tell you about a man with a very unique name, a man by the name of Horatio Spafford. Now, this is a bit of an older story. Horatio lived quite a long time ago. He was born in the year 1828, but he lived a pretty remarkable young life. Young Horatio was a very smart and intelligent young man. By the time he was in his early 30s, he had become a senior partner at a law firm in the city of Chicago. So no small place. This was a pretty amazing feat. He was very well respected. He was very, very intelligent and known in his church and his community. At the age of 31, Horatio married his wife Anna, and for the next 10 years, they would experience a period of, I guess you could call it prominence or affluence or success. His wife Anna would give birth to 4 wonderful daughters. Horatio had good financial success and prosperity through his job as a lawyer. And once again, he was very respected, well known, and appreciated in his community. In the spring of 1871, Horatio actually took a great chunk of the wealth that he had amassed, a great chunk of his financial success, and poured it into real estate investments north of the city of Chicago. Once again, in the spring of 1871, this seemed like a great move at the time as the city was growing and a lot was happening, and there was a great chance of him benefiting financially from these investments. However, in October of 1871, tragedy would strike Horatio for the first time. You see, in October of 1871, that was when the Great Chicago Fire happened and burned a huge portion of that city to the ground, and along with it, burned to the ground Horatio's brand new real estate investments. Instant financial tragedy struck Horatio, and it became a humongous source of strife for him, a humongous source of struggle. He would be embattled for years after that with zoning issues and other challenges in trying to recobble together a piece of what he had lost. After about 2 years of dealing with this incredible financial trouble and yet still trying to maintain his law practice, doing the best that he can, and still being active in his church, Horatio finally looked at his wife, Anna, and said, "You know what? We need a vacation. We need a vacation. We need to separate ourselves from this struggle for a little while." And now they were also close friends with the very popular evangelist at the time, Dwight L. Moody. You might have heard of him. But at this period in time, he was doing I guess you could call it, tour of revivals across England. And so Horatio looked at his wife, said, "What a great opportunity. Let's go to England. Let's see our friend. Let's get renewed in the spirit. Let's hear from the word. And let's just kind of regroup, build ourselves back up and come back and retackle this situation." So Horatio arranges for them to take a vacation. Cool, good dad taking care of his family. Well, right before they were supposed to set sail to England, he received word that he had been summoned. There was some kind of business that he had to deal with his property, and so he was kept behind. So he looked at his wife. He said, "Honey, you go on ahead. I'll be there shortly thereafter on another ship. You guys go ahead, and I'll follow you there." Well, Horatio sends his wife and his 4 daughters off on this ship, and a few days later receives a telegram from his wife, who is in England, and the telegram says 2 words: "Saved alone." After following up with this, Horatio would come to very quickly know that his 4 daughters on this voyage had perished because the ship that they were sailing on struck another vessel in the mid-Atlantic and sank to the bottom of the ocean. His wife, praise God, was saved. She was found unconscious, floating on a plank, and was rescued by the other ship that had been struck by their cruise vessel. So tragedy had struck Horatio's life once again, this time in the form of taking his 4 children from him. Horatio instantly drops everything he's doing and goes to the port, gets on a boat, and heads to England to go get his wife. While on this voyage, he had a couple of unique experiences. At one point, the captain of the ship, who knew Horatio's story and knew him, called him to the bridge and informed him that right at that point, they were passing over the coordinates where the cruise ship carrying his family had sunk. And he was able to sort of experience that moment and see the final resting place of his 4 daughters. In that moment, though, he did not show weakness. Obviously, there was grief there, but he would later pen these words about that moment in a telegram to his sister-in-law later on. He would say these words right here. He said, "As we passed over the spot where she went down, where the waters were 3 miles deep, I did not think of our dear ones there." He said, "They are safe, folded, the dear lambs." He knew and he was confident that his daughters were safe in the arms of Jesus. It was also on that same voyage that Horatio would pen these words. Let's see if you recognize them. "When peace, like a river, attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul." Those are the words of the great hymn we know as "It is Well." Those were not words that were penned in a time of comfort. Those words were not penned in a time of prosperity. Those words were penned in a time of tragedy and sorrow. And yet they came from the heart of a man who understood the promises of God, who understood the love of Jesus, and understood the destination that we have when we follow him. It is an absolutely amazing story. You see, Horatio Spafford, even in the face of tragedy, both took comfort in the promises of God and understood that in those hard times, worship is a good response. But you know what? Horatio's struggles didn't even end there. Following that voyage to get his wife, she struggled very, very strongly with survivor's syndrome, and he had to be present and help her through those feelings of guilt that you often had when you were the one that survived. Later on, she would go on to have a few more children, 3 more children to be exact. The oldest of those, their son, would even perish from scarlet fever. And yet, do you know what Horatio's response was? In light of losing his family members, in light of his financial tragedy, in losing all of the material wealth that he had acquired through his success as a prominent lawyer, his final decision to serve the Lord was to finally become a missionary. He would later on move to Israel itself and set up a mission there and work with local people to help and provide food and spread the gospel and do wonderful things. And right now, he is buried in Mount Zion Cemetery in Jerusalem itself. You see, Horatio understood God's promise, and he understood what it meant to be a follower of Jesus. I'd like to now read you from the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, the 22nd and 23rd verse. The writer of Hebrews says this. He says, "Let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with the full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water." And verse 23, listen to this. "Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful." God was faithful to Horatio to the last. He understood this, and that hope and faithfulness carried him through the most tragic of circumstances. So my question to us is, in light of what the scriptures say, in light of the examples of those that have gone before us, like Horatio Spafford enduring this horrible tragedy, how do we respond in the struggles that we face? Do we get frustrated and turn from God and feel as though he's abandoned us, or do we cling to the promises of Jesus, knowing that one day all will be made right in him, and then carry on through that tragedy? It is my prayer for you today that both you and I would look at these examples and we would be able to look honestly at Jesus and say, no matter what, in whatever circumstance, Lord, it is well with my soul. God bless you all. Thanks for tuning in to Truth Tuesday. Have a great week.